if you're old enough, you remember it. That's right, the console wars. I'm talking about the real console wars, the one that started console wars. Nintendo versus Sega in the 90s. No holds barred, that was the console war. You remember those days, guys? I remember those days. And here's pretty much how it went.
Sega is awesome!
Nuh-uh, Nintendo's cooler.
Sega is for adults!
It has more games.
Sega is for cool people!
It's for adults too.
It has blast processing!
What the hell is blast processing?
What Nintendo?
Hello everyone, this is the Metal Geek. Welcome to the Retro Underground. Today guys, we're going to be taking a look at clone consoles. Now for those of you who are not familiar with clone consoles, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a video game console that is a clone of an original console. So for example, a console that might clone or play Nintendo games, but it's not actually made by Nintendo or an NES or Super NES or whatever it is that it's cloning. Today, we are going to be looking at this. Now this device, guys, this is a Sega Genesis. Now I know some of you are probably wondering, wasn't the Sega Genesis much, larger than that? Well, yes it was, but again, guys, this is a clone system. It's not the original Genesis, but it does play Genesis games. Of course, that does mean that this thing is actually a pretty good space saver. But it's not really the size that matters, guys. It's what's under a hood that really counts. That's what she said. So, what does this machine actually have to offer? Well, it has two controller ports, just like the original Genesis did. Port 1 and Port 2. It has a cartridge slot so you can put your Genesis games in, your AC adapter hookup, and the hookup for your composite cables. But let's go back to this button right here. Now, what does this button do? It says Menu. Now guys, clone consoles are usually completely reliant on the original cartridges. And while AtGames' Sega Genesis Classic Game Console does have the cartridge slot for the original cartridges, this is also a plug-and-play. Plug-and-plays, guys, are basically devices that just plug directly into your TV, have games installed, and you just play them, no cartridges needed. And while this does, again, play the cartridges, this little device actually comes with 80 games already installed. 80 games is a lot of games, guys, but okay, let's be a little real. Only 40 of them are official Genesis games. But we'll talk about the other 40 games in just a minute. But of those 40 games, you're getting an excellent library of games. You're getting some of the best that the Genesis ever had to offer. I mean, we got Sonic the Hedgehog 1, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog there's no Sonic the Hedgehog 3. We have Sonic and Knuckles 1 and 2, Sonic Spinball, but in all honesty, I have no idea why they left Sonic the Hedgehog 3 out of the list. But I mean, we do have Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2, and we did get Sonic and Knuckles in this list, and we do have Sonic 3D Blast, Sonic Spinball, plus a load of other great games such as the Golden Axe series, Echo the Dolphin, Echo Jr., Alex the Kid, Altered Beast. There's a lot of great games here. In fact, if you never plug a cartridge into this machine, you have a great library just to begin with, which is already installed here. And of course, you still have the benefit of actually plugging in your cartridges. So I guess if you do want to play Sonic the Hedgehog 3, you could just plug your cartridges and play it. But then, let's take a look at these other 40 games. I mean, guys, these games are they're homebrew games, and to be 100% honest with you, they're pretty terrible. In fact, they're just really not good at all. and I've maybe played them once through just to see what they're like. But yeah, no, you're not missing anything if you never play any of these games below the original 40 that you see up here in the top of the box. Now again, you got 40 excellent Genesis games to start off with, and then you turn around and you can plug your cartridges in. But what is cartridge compatibility like? Yeah, okay, so let's be honest, not every single cartridge is going to work in this machine. So what is cartridge compatibility like? Well, to be honest with you, out of all the games that I tried, probably about 90% of them worked perfectly fine with very little to no noticeable setbacks. For the most part, everything worked as it should be. But this is not going to be a completely and full replacement for your Sega Genesis. And for example, even though again you got your cartridge slot, you're not going to be able to plug your 32X into it. If you look on the side and on the bottom, there's no place to hook up a Sega CD. And just because of the fact it's not compatible with every single cartridge. Okay, so we've talked about the console. We've talked about what it can do and what it can't do.
Let's processing!
Well, now let's take a look at the accessories. So let's take a look at the controller. This is the controller that is included with the console. Two of them come packaged in, and they're both wireless. Now as you can see, these controllers are modeled after the 6-button version of the Sega Genesis controller. For the most part, these controllers are actually built very well. They feel very solid. The plastic doesn't feel all that cheap. It doesn't feel like it's going to break in your hand or that it's going to break if you drop it on the floor. The buttons have the right amount of resistance to it. They don't stick, they don't feel like they're going to fall off or anything like that. And the directional D-pad actually works very, very well. But let's go back to the wireless aspect of this for just a second. Now these controllers are wireless, and that is nice, but they do use infrared for their wireless connection, not Bluetooth, which means if you're not pretty much pointing right at the system, the controller might not respond or respond all that well.
Damn you! God damn you all to hell!
And that can be a bit annoying, but I do find that if I sit about 6 to 7 feet back and then pointing in the general direction, I don't really have that much problem with these controllers. Equally though, if you're not a fan of the wireless controllers, and I know a lot of people aren't, you don't have to use the wireless controllers. You could actually use an official wired Genesis controller, or even an aftermarket controller that is wired. Now, if you don't own your original controllers anymore, you could actually get aftermarket controllers for maybe $5 to $10. Sometimes you can get 2 for $10, and these work just fine. Speaking of, I will be covering these controllers at some point in this series, so be sure to check that out. Now that we've talked about the system, now that we've talked about the controllers, let's talk about the gigantic elephant in the room. Yes, that's how does this thing play? Well, let's take a look. The first thing you're going to notice when you turn this machine on, when there's no cartridges in the slot, is that it's going to go straight to a menu screen. This menu screen is where you can access all the games that are stored on the system. At any time during gameplay, if you want to just switch to a different game, all you have to do is hit the menu button on the machine, or you could hit the menu button on the controller. Now as you can see, the games do run pretty similar to how they ran on the Genesis originally. They're pretty much all there, mostly in look and style. There might be a little bit of difference with the colors, and there's certainly some differences with the sound. Now remember guys, the Genesis was not a stereo system, it was a mono system, so it didn't have stereo sound. So in this case, with the AtGames Sega Genesis, you're actually only getting a mono chord. There isn't stereo sound here. But because it is emulation rather than playing off the cartridge, and because the hardware is a bit different, there are some sound differences in some cases, and things don't quite sound the way that you remember them. But for the most part, if you're really in it just to play the gameplay is all there, but it's more than playable to anybody who's really into gaming and not too picky about having things the way they were exactly when they played them like 20 years ago. Overall, guys, I'm going to give this a solid 8 out of 10. Largely because it actually is a very well made little system. Yes, this is not going to replace your Genesis, as I said before, but if you're just looking to have some good old-fashioned gaming experiences, some retro gaming, and you don't have access to your Genesis anymore, whatever the case is, or if you want to introduce someone to classic gaming, this isn't such a bad way to do it. It's actually a nice little device. You can plug it in, doesn't take up a lot of space. You can plug in your official controllers, and you can have some fun. You've already got 40 excellent games installed on the machine, and if you still have access to your cartridges at the very least, well, at that point, you can do whatever you like to do with this. So 8 out of 10. It's a nice little device to have, guys. You can get it for about 25 bucks. It doesn't replace your Genesis, but you can still have a great time with it. This is the Metal Geek saying, have a great one, guys.
Let's process it!
I say that you have won. When I say that I have given up. When I say that I have had enough. All you ever do is leave your problems piling up. When you say things are looking up, I look around